Buenos días a todos. Para aquellos que no me conozcáis, mi nombre es Cristina Rico, soy coordinadora de programas y actividades en la Fundación Lilly y os acompañaré hoy a lo largo de todo el día anunciando un poco el programa que seguiremos. Comentaros que podéis tuitear en redes sociales con el hashtag Educación Médica y también comentaros que tenéis en vuestros sitios unos tarjetones para las preguntas que queráis pasarles a los moderadores de cada sesión. Y bueno, sin más dilación, pues vamos a empezar ya con la primera sección del encuentro de hoy, que es el reconocimiento maestro de la Cátedra de Educación Médica, Fundación Lilly, Universidad Complutense de Madrid. Y para ello voy a dar paso a Jesús Millán y a Javier Arias, codirectores de la cátedra, quienes introducirán al ponente de esta conferencia.
Buenos días y bienvenidos. Es nuestro cumpleaños, cumplimos 18 años. A partir de ahora nos podemos, como decíamos ayer, casi independizar. Y estamos un año más aquí, ¿no? Alguien recordaba, me parece que era el doctor Sacristán, que ayer comentando en los comentarios de pasillo dice, pues mira, he tenido la oportunidad de revisar los programas de los encuentros de verano desde hace 18 años, ¿no? ¿Cómo éramos hace 18 años en educación médica? ¿Cómo éramos, no? Bueno, Bolonia no se había instaurado, ¿cómo éramos? Pues éramos muy distintos. Pero hay un hilo conductor permanente en la educación médica, que es que pretende formar buenos profesionales y pretende que quienes los formen sean los mejores profesores. Ese es el hilo conductor de la educación médica, ¿no? Lo demás son reflexiones, qué es lo que se tiene que enseñar, qué es lo que tiene que aprender un alumno, cómo lo tiene que aprender, cómo se puede evaluar los resultados del aprendizaje, en qué entorno lo puede, aprender, etc. Pero hay un nexo común desde ese punto de vista, ¿no? La educación médica maneja una combinación, ¿no?, ingente de estrategias educativas, de contenidos formativos, de contenidos curriculares, de resultados de aprendizaje, de experiencias cada vez más, ¿no?, de técnicas y procesos de evaluación en un entorno que es multivariante y en el que encima hay tres agentes que están implicados, que es el paciente, el profesor y el estudiante, ¿no?, alrededor del currículum. Este núcleo sigue igual, pero todo lo que se produce alrededor de eso pues ha cambiado extraordinariamente desde hace 18 años, ¿no? Pero en suma es una tarea compartida de personas, instituciones, sociedades, unidades en los centros educativos que en sus distintas vertientes tienden a mejorar esto. Bueno, desde hace 4 años, en el encuentro de verano, nos propusimos hacer un reconocimiento a personas, organizaciones, instituciones que nos han ayudado, que han sido referentes nuestros y que de alguna manera han marcado y marcan el camino de lo que es la doctrina, la utilización de recursos educativos, el diseño, la búsqueda de la calidad, de la enseñanza, reconocerlo de alguna manera, haciéndolos nuestros maestros, los maestros de la Cátedra de Educación Médica, nuestros referentes, ¿no? La profesora Patricio, primer año, pues, como estoy seguro que ustedes saben, una mujer compendio, no se me ocurre otra denominación, compendio de la educación médica, ¿no? En su protagonismo, el profesor Harden, el siguiente año, que nos ha legado las ECOES, los programas Aspire de excelencia de la enseñanza, SPICE, la utilización de las mejores evidencias en educación médica con el proyecto MEVE. El profesor León Borquez, el año pasado, que desde su puesto institucional, él no personalmente, pero a través de la World Federation, nos ha legado cómo implementar la calidad de la enseñanza utilizando estándares educativos, ¿no? Este año tenemos un maestro que por su propia experiencia, por su propia dedicación, tiene méritos sobrados para serlo. Pero es que además está aquí porque tiene grandes responsabilidades dentro de un entorno en el cual pues, su misión fundamental es ayudar a los estudiantes y a los profesores a la enseñanza de la medicina y por extensión de las ciencias de la salud. Es don David Hough. Y yo quiero que el profesor Arias pues, haga una presentación del mismo.
Queridas amigos y amigos, me corresponde hoy una tarea especialmente grata, presentar al nuevo maestro de la Cátedra de Educación Médica Fundación Lilly UCM. Un título que no se concede por ocupar un cargo importante ni por representar a una institución influyente, sino por méritos personales, por una trayectoria que ha contribuido de verdad a mejorar la educación médica. David Michael Hough es vicepresidente senior de Educación Médica Global y director general de Osmosis en Elsevier. Desde estos puestos ha impulsado proyectos educativos de gran alcance, ayudando a profesores y estudiantes de todo el mundo a mejorar sus resultados de aprendizaje con una clara orientación hacia la práctica clínica y el beneficio del paciente y un intento sincero de basarse en la evidencia. Su liderazgo ha sido reconocido con el premio Lead the Way por su capacidad para desarrollar talento y fomentar la innovación educativa, y ha sido seleccionado para el programa ejecutivo Harvard Enterprising Leaders, centrado en inteligencia artificial aplicada a la salud y la educación. Pero hoy no lo reconocemos por sus cargos ni por sus premios. David no está aquí en representación institucional, sino como una persona que ha sabido tender puentes con nuestras facultades, con nuestros proyectos, con nuestra manera de entender la formación médica, siempre con generosidad y cercanía. Durante años ha colaborado de forma respetuosa, honesta y constante en iniciativas que nacen desde el mundo universitario, aportando sin imponer, escuchando, comprendiendo, sumando. Por todo ello, y con enorme gratitud, le damos la bienvenida a esta comunidad de maestros que tanto valoramos. David, enhorabuena y muchas gracias por estar hoy con nosotros.
Buenos días. Voy a conectarme y empezamos. ¿Ya? Muy bien. La pregunta grande es, ¿español o inglés? Vamos a ver los dos. Pero bueno, y hola y gracias por la oportunidad para hablar con vosotros. para mí es un honor, de verdad. Y soy David de Elsevier. Mi apellido es Hough, como How are you? Así, easy way to remember. Y he vivido en Madrid desde hace 13 años, actualmente, y aprendí un poquito español. Y principalmente quiero decir gracias y agradecimientos a la Cátedra de Educación, Médica Fundación Lilly, UCM, la Sociedad Española de Educación Médica, la Conferencia Nacional de Decanos de Facultades de Medicina y a la Sociedad Española de Formación Sanitaria Especializada. Yo encontré muchos de los líderes de estos grupos, asociaciones anoche, y estoy impresionado con la experiencia otra vez. La palabra me parece es humilde, ¿no? Sentando con vosotros es un honor. Y también a la dirección y coordinación académica de Javier Arias, Jesús Millán y Natalia. Necesitamos hablar más tarde, pero quiero decir gracias a usted también. Y José Antonio Sacristán por su invitación a participar en este encuentro. Yo llegué, como hablamos, hace 13 años en Madrid, y una de mis primeras visitas era en Complutense, y está con la historia de la universidad, y después visitando mucho de sus universidades con mis colegas aquí. ¿Conoces Luis González? Está aquí con nosotros, muchos, y visitamos mucho de España. Pero hablamos hoy y voy a ver dónde estamos, perdón. Aquí vamos a hablar más de educación médica, y quiero hablar de datos que tenemos de una investigación, y también vamos a hablar de mis experiencias, porque tengo responsabilidad global para educación médica en Elsevier. Pero principalmente, a veces es difícil para cambiar su mente y empezar el día, ¿no? Y voy a cambiar en inglés, si está bien. And so if you can just think with me for a moment about potentially a moment when you struggled with a topic. Hay algo en tu vida, tiene una experiencia difícil, ¿no? Maybe you were trying to learn a new skill. Maybe you were trying to understand a complex topic. I know I can think of some ideas in my life. So think about how it felt in that moment, that challenge that you had to overcome, and how maybe you received a little bit of support in that moment, or you could have used, maybe reflecting now, you could have used a fresh approach to that situation you felt. I'm sure you can reflect on that. Well, here we have an image of a young lady. Let's call her Maya. She could be any one of your students, one of your colleagues, somebody in your family who maybe had that similar experience. I have 3 children myself, so I know I can think of them and the experiences they've had going through studies. And even though she had a lot of potential, she was feeling overwhelmed. Maybe in our own circumstance, we were feeling that way also. But she had a group of people, teachers, professors who were believing in her. And they, even though she was lacking that tailored approach, she couldn't find that experience that would push her over to the next level. So thankfully, a dedicated teacher came along, a professor, and provided some ideas, some new thinking. Maybe you should try this tailored approach. Maybe you should try this new tool. And then suddenly she blossomed. And I think many of us have stories like that with either a new tool, a new approach, and that's a little bit of what we want to talk about today. Because to me, this reflects a broader truth about personalized support, innovative approaches, using technology, and future-ready skills. Do we have those skills for the future? Are we prepared? And this is not just for medical education, but this could be for healthcare as well. And all of you are experts in the room more than me, so I'm happy to have a conversation later about this with all of you. My job today is just to bring some ideas, put some concepts and some data on the table, and once again, you're the experts in the room to maybe expand your thinking a bit and for us to have a future conversation. So we're going today to explore data and feedback globally that we can continue to empower all of you as educators and helping prepare students to meet the challenges for the future, as we said. So a lot of this data is based on our program called Clinician of the Future. If you hadn't seen that, we'll connect with you after. It's a lot of interesting research that we can easily open and share with you. And the objective of this project started in 2022. And our global research team has been conducting surveys with faculty and students and clinicians, and we're trying to amplify their voices. We're trying to bring in current and future doctors and nurses and understand how they're feeling. And we are looking at global trends, the changes that will impact the future healthcare and nursing programs, and we're really trying our best to be part of the team to help support that growth. We conducted so many interviews with participants from over 100 countries, so it's truly giving you the global view, and of course Spain was part of that. So what we'll do today is look at a dynamic between global results and Spain. And we were using different techniques, online messages, focus groups, and questions that way. So we want to share some of that data, and in particular, we want to dive into two topics: virtual reality and artificial intelligence, which once again, speaking with many of you last night, this is top of mind topics, and I can see there's a lot of activity and engagement, and once again, there's some experts in the room in these areas. So I'll give a few ideas, and then we can talk further. So that's where we're headed, to give you a bit of a roadmap. This gives you a bit of sense of the program that I'm mentioning. I just really want to make sure you understand where this data is coming from. That's why I'm presenting it in this way. And this is our Clinician of the Future program. You can see what's really interesting if you go from left to right there, 2022, and the topics that we are focused on, and then moving into 2024. Certainly increasing the questionnaire about technology, obviously. And, let me just take us back to a moment. All of us experienced COVID-19. I know this is presented in many presentations, and many of you felt, just as I did, a shift to online learning, to remote clinical experiences, right? So we were doing that, and we've been trying to research and capture the details around the impact of that change. That's something I think about in my own family. I saw the change of how my children were studying, how I was working. Obviously, all impacted that. So we're trying to understand that further. And so this has impacted, a lot of us had to be more flexible with our learning modules. It exposed the limitations of traditional methods during this period. And it also emphasized the importance of preparing future doctors and nurses in emergency medicine, of course, and infectious diseases. So we're also seeing the fast evolution of technology. Topics that I already mentioned: virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and simulation technologies. Maybe you're already taking advantage of some of that. And how the medical concepts are taught and practiced with those tools. And students, you might be feeling this as well, many of the students are driving this change. They're talking to us, talking to all of you about, I like this tool, I like this way to learn. So how do either we take them along that path? That's a lot what we'll talk about today, and some ideas. And really, we're seeing that these advances of immersive learning experiences are actually have a chance to improve retention rates and provide opportunities for remote learning. So let's dive into the first topic. Here we've got the idea of augmented reality. Raise your hand in the room if you've ever tried virtual reality goggles. Is anybody? Okay, a few of us. Not so many. I'd recommend it. It's quite an experience. I see some faces that show me that it was a good experience, I imagine. Well, the objective of our research around this was to understand the experience and the perceptions of the potential use of virtual reality headsets by medical students. And we conducted a global survey by 910, that included 910 medical and nursing students from 12 countries here. We had 92 students from Spain. And here's a bit of a sense of what came out of that study. Now, keep in mind, the research was covered at the end of 2024, so that given the rapid pace of technological advancements, there's already been changes, right? We're here at the end of June 30th. So some trends may have already evolved, but this was the view at that point. And from Spain, we had 62 medical students out of 561 global point of view. So you can see there in the top left the global view, and right under that is Spain. So what's really interesting about this is the headline. 26% of the global medical students said they either use them themselves to study or that they're utilizing them in the classroom. That was a bit high, in my opinion. And then, even though it wasn't a huge group, those students that we studied in Spain actually were at 40% for medical students. So maybe you're bringing this into some of your classrooms and they're having an experience. Certainly our next piece of data points out where. This is fairly obvious, but it just reemphasizes we know that they're utilizing this in clinical practice, preparing for clinical practice, and those type of opportunities. And I keep looking at you, Dr. Lydia. We spoke last night, and she was able to share with me a story where she went to a conference focused on mental health topics, utilizing these virtual reality in un cárcel, no? In a jail setting. How interesting. What an amazing opportunity to be able to bring a student and the faculty to a jail, I'll use that word, or prison, and to have that experience of how a mental health patient is reacting or interacting in that setting. That'd be very difficult, potentially dangerous to do live. So this is one of the opportunities there. Within our own experience, we're actually doing a lot with anatomy. That's something we can talk about in the future as well. But I actually had the experience, my experience with the goggles, was actually swimming through the heart. So it was just amazing to me. I felt like I was in a futuristic movie. So that's a bit of the feedback we've gotten about virtual reality. And then let's really talk about the big topic that's top of mind is artificial intelligence. And really want to share some of these insights and data with you. First, I want to give you the foundation of the information that we studied. This was, once again, the end of 2024, December. We had 1,465 medical students and nursing students across multiple countries. We included Spain, of course, Europe, the rest of Europe, Australia, India, United Kingdom, Asia, some Asian countries were in there, Latin America, and the United States. And we dove into some particular topics: awareness and use of these tools, sources of influence, meaning were they allowed in the school to be utilizing these tools, opinions of the faculty, very interesting insights, current use cases by students, the value of AI, and then the performance. How was the actual tool they were utilizing performing? So before I start, I'm making sure everybody's engaged with me here. How many of you are educators in the room? I know we've got a mix of people who are actually educators, teaching class. All right, it's an interesting mix. Great. I'm interested in what everybody else is involved in. And how many of you that answered yes to that actually have used artificial intelligence to prepare for your class? A few less, but some are. And that's an interesting question. I hear the reaction in the room. We ask this around the world, and not everybody's comfortable raising their hand. Not everybody is did I use it or not? Is that a good thing or not? So we're at that early stage. We'll talk later about it. But yes, but certainly it's just different to see different cultures and different markets of how they're responding. But certainly I know in our own experience internally, we are using, thank you. We are using AI internally for a lot of different topics that we'll discuss today. So there was no surprise in knowing that ChatGPT was used by most students and faculty here as well. 97% of the students were familiar with ChatGPT, and 92% when it comes to Spain. And there were other tools that were less known that were listed here: Copilot, Bard. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that perfectly right, but these figures are changing by the day, as you know. And where we're seeing it used more often is in the basic sciences, which makes sense, I guess, and it entered my mind, but that'd be an interesting discussion to have. Is it the age of these students, possibly, or is it the content they're interacting with? So some questions about that. It's certainly used across multiple topics, but most of the people responding were talking about basic sciences. The majority were using there. And then in particular, we had some use cases for medical students. Here on the left, you see medical students were primarily utilizing for quick summaries of information. I think that's a lot of what those of us are using it by, but then followed by tasks relating to assessment practices. We had 17% of the respondents there. And then next, clinical practice preparation. They also mentioned more administrative tasks, such as managing schedules, taking notes from professors were also included, and they're using AI for that. And the other area was in performance and satisfaction. There were a lot of interesting comments here because we saw some positive, but then also some challenges here. ChatGPT was performing well in the fact that they were highlighting its ease of use, and the ability to save that information. But it's important to know that there was a lower performance, it's that area that we have circled here, in the accuracy of the results. Maybe you've experienced that yourself. Low accuracy of results, and the reliability of the sources. Where is this response coming from? What is building out that local language model, that LLM? And so there was a portion of mistrust there a bit and some concerns, but that's improving by the day, as we know. This is another interesting insight here that connected to that accuracy. There was a concern about trusting the accuracy, not really knowing how to use artificial intelligence, and not being aligned with the exams. All that hard work all of you have done in planes de estudios, no? That the idea of that curriculum, that matching of the content with the curriculum is a bit of a concern. And we've observed this in other educational settings, such as accuracy and academic integrity. But the growing concern is related to critical thinking. This might have come up in your own discussions. I see several of you nodding here. That, okay, so we've got this amazing tool of artificial intelligence. Where comes the critical thinking? How will we be building on that? So this is on everyone's mind. And it prompts us to think about how you can design artificial intelligence actually to promote critical thinking, how it can support that, and how we can address this concern. And then one other issue that we want to highlight is really, as I said, not knowing how to use the AI effectively. There's an opportunity for us to demonstrate that through thoughtful products, thoughtful design, and thoughtful teaching and educating these students on artificial intelligence and how to use it in an effective way. There's a testimonial listed here. We've translated that into Spanish. I'll just read it out in an English version, but it really summarizes this whole concept. In English, this Spanish lecturer said, "I haven't had much personal experience with artificial intelligence in medical education, and I don't really fully understand its usefulness. However, I believe there's a possibility it could be helpful. At the same time, it may diminish the importance of critical thinking." Top of mind to many. And we have some other ideas here that came out of comparing both the global point of view and Spain about how favorable the use of AI is in a medical program. So that's this idea of administration or faculty supporting this concept. The data reflects that by the fact that total support worldwide was 52% overall. Seemed to be support the use of AI. In our survey, it was 21% for Spain. I thought that was interesting to see the dynamic of global overall versus Spain. And once again, we gathered that in December 2024, so things might have changed a bit. And there's a testimony here as well. We asked the question, why does your faculty support or not support the use of AI tools in studies? And the answer was, they say we don't learn and that we should use our own reasoning. So that's a medical student from Spain. So that's the debate we're having. No? And potentially you've already been having this conversation. But how can we help a student learn to think critically while using artificial intelligence? Additionally, we have some more details about which tool they're using. I emphasize this a bit, just gives you a list here of the tools they're using. You can see ChatGPT in each area. It was at the top of that point, and you can see the percentage of others. To me, the next slide is more interesting. Excuse me. In this idea of how medical students use their AI in their studies. This is how they were serving, and you can see under the black column there is global, and the orange column is Spain. Practicing clinical reasoning and preparing for clinical rotations was one area where all groups actually were not leveraging this technology as much. So I thought that was insightful to see. And the topics with the greatest usage globally was summarizing theory of lessons and studying and reviewing the topics, and exam preparation. A lot of tools there. They're creating mock exams and to prepare for tests. So this gives you some of that insight. And what we've observed from data in the studies we conducted is, and this is our own perspective as well, is three core themes here. And the excessive dependence that AI can create in the learning process, combined with misinformation it can generate for students who do not know how to use it properly, or those who cannot detect information errors or false information that it presents, actually can lead to students to incorporate incomplete information into their learning process. Regarding this, depending on how generative AI has been trained, we talked about that earlier, the content that is ingested in generative AI, it's possible that incomplete information could be supplied, and a student might miss out on crucial knowledge and information in their academic training. So the key is filling that gap. The key is partnering on how we can help the student properly detect false information, and that's an opportunity for all of us. But there's a lot of positive as well. There's an immense opportunity and exciting opportunities that artificial intelligence can offer in medical education. The topics are mentioned here, but the most prominent areas, the highest potential of personalization was a big topic, personalizing the tool. Think about that story that we opened up with and how you overcame your own challenge, how our student Maya overcame that challenge by a bit of personalization, by paying attention on how they learn, on how we can overcome that challenge. Accuracy, and I'll dive into these topics a bit more on the next slides, is a big topic. The ability to have multiple high-quality questions. Alternative assessment methods, using simulated dialogues as well, and grouping large information, the idea of content curation, bringing all that content in one group and be able to synthesize it. And any of you using a flipped classroom or have heard of a flipped classroom? Raise your hand if you don't mind. A few of you? Flipped classroom? That's the idea where students would do potentially more of the study and the reading ahead of time before class, and then you're able to use that class time in a more productive manner, more interactive manner. I've actually met with some of you in the past, and you've told me about those group trainings that you do together. And this is an opportunity with AI as well. So we're going to review these opportunities in a bit more detail. The top response was personalization. So this is an idea, and these are ideas, these next few slides are what we could imagine the strength of artificial intelligence. And basically how we train AI, it'll help healthcare professionals and students and educators improve with personalizations. So this is the idea of a student and the need to interact with an informed expert. Think about when they're contacting you as faculty members, or when they're looking online for answers. They're trying to, or when they're reading a book by chance, when they're looking for that informed expert to come alongside and help them with this particular topic. And the other idea of lack of time, which many are aware of for an educator, to have that dedicated, there's a phrase called reflective attention to students. This is that one-on-one time you can spend with a student. There's not as much time available, as you well know. So this is the concept of Socratic questioning, and that's between an informed peer and a student, or a faculty member and a student. So AI can do a good job of guiding students in that way. It doesn't give them the answer directly. This is an idea. Let's not give the students an answer directly, but let's guide them through the intellectual process to master the topic. And this is the example you can see here on the right side of the screen. It's a fantastic area where students can interact at any time, day or night. They have that expert-like companion next to them and who understands their level. And you also can connect it, as we said, to your curriculum, connecting the curriculum to your school, and if simply answering the question, let's not do that. Let's encourage them to reach the answers themselves. And you'll see here you can see there an example, of how it's interacting and the questions that are asked. We also talked about precision. Precision is an opportunity for incredible benefits of AI because you're able to create multiple high-quality questions about a particular topic. You can consider the different aspects, such as treatment or diagnosis, to quickly align with various concepts and various topics that the students need to focus on more. So we have an example here of a nurse who was infected by a patient with a respiratory failure. The patient coughs in her face and becomes ill. And which family of viruses in this scenario is most associated with this scenario? And you can see, we come here with those type of questions. And what happens through this questioning process is a 26-year-old nurse in Hong Kong becoming severely ill actually has a virus associated with respiratory failure, is what they come to that same conclusion, but through a different path. And they're guided to that same conclusion as a student. And that personalization to reinforce the areas where the student is weak. So it's able to help guide them further and becomes that partner with you as faculty and as educators to guide the student further. The other area we talked about was alternative assessment methods. This would be through simulated dialogues, this idea of simulation and discussions back and forth. That helps reduce the costs of training and evaluating students, and you can use that idea of Socratic conversations guided by an expert. And this is a bit further into that as well. And this is a bit of a more difficult story, but the case here is a conversation informing a 35-year-old male patient that he has cancer. So I know this idea of educating students on how to have that conversation. I've heard that in many conferences, even conversations I had last night, on how to have that conversation with that individual, with their family, and the difference between the conversation between a 35-year-old and a 65-year-old. Should it be different? What should you consider? So AI would tell us it's essential to tailor the conversation to the individual's age, life circumstances, preferences, considering the family environment, because there's unique concerns and priorities. And behind me you can see the path that this idea of how AI could be used as a tool to benefit in this way. And you might even consider this in discussions with younger patients that may involve more focus on future planning. These are things that are much different than a conversation with a person who's older. And you're guided through this idea, and this might be a way that AI could actually be quite a strong partner with you. We talked about flipped classroom. Remember that model of flipped classroom where a student is studying beforehand and you use that time in class to be very proactive and a lot of engagement. And here we've got unique opportunities, and there's a great moment to develop those critical thinking skills that we believe may be lacking by the use of AI. AI could produce at scale this idea of the information needed ahead of time. And it could be that guide, as mentioned, to transmit knowledge. and it's able to simulate different characters in the process. And practical question scenarios are, practical thinking, scenarios are across multiple scenarios there. And that's currently not feasible. So another area that we could build out. And lastly, generative AI models and large language models, you know those phrases, GAI, LLM, local language models, have the ability to analyze and summarize and organize huge amount of information. And this allows you to customize for different levels of training, different media formats, and it also allows the curation of education materials. You could include within it books, journals, videos, assessment rubrics, coordinated all with multiple criteria. And this is all in context of medical education. It can create a tailored, comprehensive learning resource to meet the goals and to support your educational goals. So that was a lot of information, that was a lot of dreaming, right, and where we could go. But we're just at the beginning of AI, right? A lot of us are just engaging with the tool, and a lot of the students are doing that. So who knows where we'll be in 5 years? That's the question. So what do we do now? That's something we can continue to discuss. And a lot of these are continuing, both the AI and the local large language models, they continue to evolve rapidly. Large language models are primarily designed and trained in English language. And actually, they reflect many of the cultures and viewpoints of the global north. I know this is something that's being tried to improve, and a lot of, once again, you experts in the room can educate me on how advanced we are, but the original version is educated there. Developed, when I say global north, I had to learn that term a couple of years ago, global north, global south, just for all in the room. That's those developed countries, global north, mainly United Kingdom, Europe, and America, the United States. And therefore, it's important to recognize that the models may have those biases of limitations and related to cultural and linguistic orientation. And the other thing that I've learned recently is the amount of energy AI consumes. I wasn't quite aware of that actually until preparing and getting some learning from my colleagues. And the amount of energy consumes and a huge amount of data centers to power these AI models. And those that are used in healthcare have to use a significant amount of energy. We have a study from 2019 from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, that estimated training a single large AI model can emit roughly the same amount of how much carbon is emitted from 5 cars, 5 automobiles, in an entire lifetime. That's just to create one model. So obviously that's a situation that needs to be improved. And in healthcare, where AI models use so much energy for medical image analysis, predictions, data processing, the energy consumption is great. And there's also an opportunity to improve the reproducibility, that idea of repeatability, where the same question is asked, giving the same response. That's something that can be improved. And as we talked earlier, remember our student Maya, remember our own challenge, that concept of personalized learning. It means that more tailored education materials, such as courses, resources, and activities, will be created for the student. That will happen. And it will be necessary to evaluate the students more frequently, or specifically to measure their progress of understanding, that critical thinking once again. Therefore, as materials become available, they become more personalized, and the demand for assessment will also increase. Many institutions are working on areas related to AI principles. And I just wanted to share an example here because there needs to be, from my perspective, a reasonable approach. And this is what, at Elsevier, we've done to take time to commit to using AI responsibly. We have our own principles here listed to make sure we're promoting transparency through AI, ensuring an ethical engagement, and safeguard trust, protect the data that we use, and being able to explain what we do. And the technology is so powerful and so much opportunity, as we discussed here today, that it requires multiple perspectives to ensure we are moving in the right direction. And I just want to share also the resources that we've used for this presentation. Some that's behind it. We'll be sharing this presentation with you after, but you can see some of the resources that we've utilized here. And I welcome an opportunity to continue the conversation. There are so many ways to understand how AI works in medical education, and many opportunities to collaborate with all of you and test those ideas. So that's why I invite you to continue the conversation with me. A lot of my colleagues are here today with each other because we want to learn from each other, enrich those ideas, and exchange those opportunities. So I'll put up my contact information here on the next slide, but I believe we finished a bit earlier. Dr. Arias, if it's okay, I'll encourage maybe just a brief discussion. We have a few more minutes if folks can turn around and have a discussion. Is that okay? So, muchas gracias. Espero que... Y como hablamos es para empezar la conversación y si puede decir, cambiar y hablar con su pareja brevemente, 5 minutos, porque tenemos un poquito más tiempo. Si puedes hacer una vuelta o con su colega atrás, al lado, y solamente una conversación. ¿Qué estás pensando ahora de tecnología? ¿Qué estás pensando sobre AI o virtual reality? Y escribir sus notas y tiene mi información de contacto, podemos hablar al lado o dime qué piensas, por favor. Gracias de nuevo y muchas gracias. Permiso, ¿quieres decir algo?
Muy bien, muchas gracias,
Están hablando,
David.
no sé. Yo dije hablar 5 minutos. Yo dije ellos si quieren hablar 5 minutos de discutir un poquito, pero no sé si quieres.
Vamos justo en el tiempo.
Estamos cerca, lo siento.
Estamos justo. David va a estar...
No tenemos 5 minutos.
David va a estar con nosotros unos minutos más hasta que la organización nos diga que tenemos que pasar a la siguiente sesión. Y él se queda aquí, pero en todo caso, nos toca al profesor Arias y a mí mismo, pues darte las gracias.
A ti.
Una barbaridad. Y gracias por lo que supone y nos ayuda a este mundo tan apasionante de nuestro presente, que es formar para los futuros médicos. Por lo tanto, tú eres un maestro para nosotros.
Impresionante. Mira, qué bueno. Gracias.
David, te piden que trabajes un poco más. Tenemos que revisar el programa, no sé a qué hora está prevista la siguiente sesión. ¿En 10 minutos? Fenomenal. Pues entonces, David.
Vamos a ver si puedo contestar.
Nos preguntan,
Okay.
contestan en inglés, no hay problema, el papel de la
¿Quiere decir aquí?
inteligencia artificial en los trabajos fin de grado. ¿Cómo se puede hacer y controlar?
Vale. En fin de grado estamos hablando de preparación para prácticas, ¿no? Y residencia, fin de grado. ¿No? Ok, investigación, gracias. Bueno, seguramente depende cómo hablamos de... Voy a intentar hablar en castellano. Pero depende de local language model, como hablamos, la manera de cuál contenido tiene dentro de la propuesta. Si estáis haciendo mucha investigación al final de grado y tiene acceso de todos los datos y la información dentro del LLM, va a apoyar mucho. Me parece, si alguien con más experiencia tiene otra contestación, por favor. ¿Hay otro?
Otra pregunta. Uno de los usos de la IA es como método de evaluación de los alumnos sin la intervención del profesor. ¿Qué opinión le merece? Es unsupervised, not supervised evaluation, student evaluation.
Sí, porque los alumnos están autoevaluación, ¿no?
Sí,
ok.
sí.
Puede tocar, vale. No sé si todos, voy a repetir para poner en mi mente. El tema es autoevaluación de los alumnos sin intervención de los profesores. Bueno, como hablamos, el alumno está usando la herramienta para preparar. Son las preguntas que piensan van dentro del examen y pueden usar en esta manera, pero sin profesor, pero siempre tiene el profesor al lado, ¿no? Con los exámenes. El final del examen es siempre su examen y es solamente práctica. Y con es una oportunidad para practicar más y practicar más. Me parece la pregunta. Y muchas gracias. Los nombres aquí. Alonso, gracias por la pregunta. Y Montse.
In which way can be used for systematic reviews in research?
Systematic reviews. Estás poco fuera mi información porque estoy en educación y menos en la investigación. Mi colega Beatriz está aquí para ayudarme un poquito posiblemente. Pero systematic reviews, yeah. Systematic analysis, yeah. Yeah. Bueno, en estoy pensando me parece que tengo la misma respuesta. Es la información que tienes dentro del Local Language Model y depende el prompt. Con puedes usar una manera de cuál es tu pregunta. Todos saben posiblemente la frase prompt, ¿no? Es la pregunta que puse ahí. Y si está usando, pueden usar, si conoce la manera. I have to switch to English now, I'm sorry. If you understand the algorithm or the model, these systemic reviews are taking place, then you could use that model, you could use a prompt that actually suggests, okay, this is the information that'll be reviewed. This is how your research looks compared to that, and these are your gaps. That would be my knowledge of that area. And Ana Sánchez, gracias por la pregunta. Muy bien.
Thank you very much. And I hope your prediction about IA will be true, will be soon true.
Muy bien. Muchas gracias. Gracias.